They laughed at his old car, then he revealed he owned the dealership. The air in the grand showroom of Velocity Motors' flagship dealership was thick with a tension that few noticed, yet it crackled with an unspoken judgment, a prelude to a storm. Aldenora, a figure seemingly sculpted from fragility and neglect, sat on an opulent leather sofa, a stark contrast to the gleaming chrome and polished marble surrounding her. Her threadbare coat, a relic of a bygone era, seemed to absorb the ambient light, rendering her almost invisible to the bustling, well-dressed clientele and the impeccably suited staff. Her beat-up, vintage sedan, a relic of automotive history, sat outside, a humble anachronism, an affront to the dealership's pristine facade and the sleek, modern machinery within. Each polished surface in the showroom reflected an image of unattainable perfection, and her presence, her very essence, felt like a smudge on that pristine canvas. Thorne, her grandson, stood a few feet away, a predatory smile plastered across his perfectly sculpted features. His expensive suit seemed to hum with an almost audible arrogance, tailored to emphasize his broad shoulders and the effortless ease with which he carried himself through a world he believed was rightfully his. Beside him, Serafina, his equally superficial partner, clutched a designer handbag as if it were a shield against Aldenora's perceived squalor, her perfectly coiffed hair and meticulously applied makeup forming a flawless, yet cold, mask. They conversed in hushed, yet clearly audible, tones, their words dripping with a disdain so potent it seemed to leave an acrid taste in the air. Thorne gestured dismissively towards Aldenora's ancient vehicle, its faded paint and minor dents screaming of a life lived, then back at the frail woman herself, a smirk playing on his lips. His voice, usually modulated for maximum charm, now held an edge of open contempt. Honestly, Serafina, he drawled, ensuring his words carried just enough to reach Aldenora's ears without overtly breaking the veneer of polite society, some people have no concept of appropriate places. This isn't a junkyard, it's a luxury dealership. One expects a certain caliber of clientele, a certain standard. He paused, letting his gaze sweep over Aldenora, a silent judgment that withered any perceived worth. Serafina tittered, a high-pitched, brittle sound that grated on the nerves, like fingernails on a chalkboard. It was a laugh designed to be heard, to dismiss. Darling, it's beyond a junkyard. It's an antique that belongs in a museum, or perhaps a dumpster. And the owner, well, she certainly fits the bill, doesn't she? Her eyes, sharp and calculating, raked over Aldenora's simple attire, assessing and dismissing her within seconds. Every fiber of Aldenora's being registered their words, not with pain, but with a profound, weary disappointment. They were entirely oblivious, utterly blind to the silent, knowing gaze Aldenora returned, a gaze that held the weight of decades of shrewd observation, the genesis of an empire, and a power they could not even begin to fathom. She watched them, these two beautiful, empty vessels, and a deep sadness settled in her spirit, the sadness of watching a precious legacy slowly rot from within. Aldenora's fingers, gnarled with age but still possessing an underlying strength, twitched almost imperceptibly, a phantom sensation of control over the vast web she had spun. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips, a secret amusement that played across her features, a silent acknowledgement of the profound irony unfolding before her. She knew exactly what they were. She knew precisely what they represented, everything she feared her legacy had become, a monument to superficiality, a shrine to greed. The grand stage was set. The final act was about to begin. The game, as she inwardly declared, was indeed over. Thorne and Serafina, cocooned in their ignorance and privilege, continued to mock, their voices echoing in the high-ceilinged showroom, unaware that the very woman they scorned held their entire future, and the future of the multi-billion-dollar Velocity Auto Group, in her weathered hands. The irony was so profound, it was almost poetic, a tragic comedy playing out on a stage of polished marble and gleaming chrome. Aldenora wasn't born into wealth, she had forged it with her own two hands, brick by meticulous brick, deal by painstaking deal. Her earliest memories were of the pervasive scent of grease and oil, the rhythmic clang of tools, and the tireless hum of engines in her father's small, struggling repair shop in a gritty industrial district. She had learned the value of $1 from the moment she could count, and the importance of integrity from her father, a man who believed a handshake was as binding as any contract. From that single, humble garage, fueled by an insatiable drive and an uncanny business acumen, she had built the Velocity Auto Group into a global empire, a multi-billion-dollar chain of luxury car dealerships synonymous with unparalleled service and integrity. Or so it had once been. Her life had been a testament to hard work, shrewd judgment, and, above all, a deep-seated belief in the inherent value of character over material possessions. She had always preached that true wealth lay not in the size of one's bank account, but in the richness of one's spirit and the kindness of one's heart, a philosophy she instilled in every employee, every manager, every family member, or so she had hoped. Yet, as the years had turned into decades, as the empire grew, Aldenora had watched with a growing sense of despair as the very values she championed seemed to erode within her own family and staff. Her children, raised amidst affluence, had developed a comfortable detachment from the realities of struggle, a subtle shift that Aldenora had initially dismissed as a generational difference, a natural softening that came with prosperity. But with her grandchildren, the detachment had morphed into outright entitlement, a virulent strain of materialism that threatened to consume the very soul of her empire. Dinners at the grand family estate, once lively discussions of innovation and customer satisfaction, had devolved into shallow conversations about stock portfolios, luxury brands, and the latest celebrity gossip. The spirit of honest toil and genuine connection seemed to fade with each passing generation. Thorne, her eldest grandson, was the most egregious example, a living embodiment of the corruption of her values. He had never known a day of true hardship, never lifted a finger for anything he couldn't acquire with a platinum card. From childhood, he had been indulged, his every whim catered to, leading to a profound absence of self-reliance or empathy. He viewed the Velocity Auto Group not as a testament to hard work and vision, but as his inevitable inheritance, a sprawling playground for his extravagant tastes and insatiable desire for public adoration. He reveled in the superficial glamour of the luxury car business, equating success solely with the flashiest models and the highest profit margins, utterly devoid of any genuine passion for the vehicles themselves or the people who bought and sold them. He saw cars as commodities, not as engineering marvels or symbols of personal dreams. His partner, Serafina, was a perfect, glittering reflection of his worst traits, amplifying his vanity and reinforcing his contempt for anyone who didn't fit into their narrow definition of success. She judged a person's worth by their designer labels, the make of their car, and the size of their apparent fortune, blind to the quiet dignity that often resided in simpler lives, incapable of seeing beauty beyond a price tag. Aldenora had attempted, gently at first, then with increasing urgency, to steer them back to the foundational principles of the Velocity Auto Group. She had organized workshops on customer service, encouraged humility through carefully curated stories of the company's humble origins, and even attempted to share anecdotes from her own arduous journey, hoping to instill a sense of gratitude and perspective. She remembered one such evening, where she spoke of sleeping on the garage floor, covered in grease, just to finish a repair for a desperate customer. Thorne had stifled a yawn, and Serafina had checked her phone. But her words seemed to fall on deaf ears, echoing hollowly in the vast, echoing halls of their opulent mansions. Thorne would nod politely, feigning interest, his eyes glazed over, only to dismiss her concerns as the ramblings of an old woman out of touch with modern business, a relic of a bygone era. Serafina would smile sweetly, her eyes glazing over with boredom, already plotting her next high-end shopping spree, mentally redecorating the mansions they would soon inherit. The tipping point had come during a particularly contentious board meeting, a meeting Aldenora had orchestrated specifically to test their moral compass. Aldenora, subtly probing, had suggested a new initiative to support community outreach programs, a means to give back, to reinforce the company's ethical standing and connect with the broader community, a move she felt was essential for long-term sustainability. Thorne had scoffed, openly, not even bothering to hide his disdain. "Grandma, with all due respect," he had said, his voice laced with thinly veiled condescension, his hand waving dismissively, "we're in the business of selling cars, not charity. Our clients expect luxury, not philanthropy. This sort of distraction will only dilute our brand. It's bad for the bottom line." Serafina had chimed in, her voice sharp as glass. "Indeed, Aldenora. Imagine what our high-net-worth clients would think. It simply isn't chic to be seen associating with charitable causes. It makes us look desperate, not exclusive." The raw, unadulterated contempt for anything that didn't directly translate into personal gain had crystallized Aldenora's growing despair into a firm, unyielding resolve. She realized that words were useless. Lectures were futile. To truly see the depth of their moral decay, and more importantly, to identify any flicker of hope, any hidden ember of the company's original spirit within her sprawling organization, she needed to observe them unvarnished, without the protective shield of her name and immense fortune. She needed to become invisible. She needed to become irrelevant in their eyes. The plan had taken shape over weeks of meticulous plotting, a strategic masterpiece worthy of the empire she had built. She acquired a battered, unassuming 1985 Ford Taurus, a car so anachronistic in her world of supercars and gleaming showrooms that it would immediately mark her as an outsider, a nobody. She chose it not for its mechanical prowess, but for its humble appearance, a vehicle that screamed negligible to the superficial eye. It was a car that would trigger immediate dismissal, a perfect prop for her disguise. Her wardrobe was carefully curated, faded, ill-fitting clothes, a worn-out coat with frayed cuffs, shoes scuffed beyond repair that had seen more practical use than any of Serafina's designer heels. Her silver hair, usually coiffed to perfection, was pulled back loosely, partially hidden by a simple scarf, adding to the impression of someone overlooked. She even practiced a slight stoop in her posture, cultivating the image of an elderly woman burdened by age and, presumably, poverty, her movements slower, more tentative. Her goal was not merely to expose Thorne and Serafina, though that was a significant component, a necessary surgical removal. Her true quest was to find genuine integrity, a beacon of kindness in the pervasive darkness of materialism. She believed, fundamentally, that true character revealed itself not when one was showered with riches, when one was surrounded by adulation, but when one was confronted with perceived insignificance. Who would treat a nobody with respect? Who would see beyond the tattered clothes and the old car to the human being underneath? This was the ultimate test, a reckoning that would determine the future leadership and the very soul of the Velocity Auto Group. She was Aldenora, the titan of industry, the quiet force behind a global empire, but for this experiment, she was simply an old woman, invisible, overlooked, and utterly underestimated. The morning Aldenora decided to initiate her test, the sun shone deceptively bright over the Velocity Motors flagship dealership, its rays glinting off the polished chrome of the luxury vehicles displayed within, mocking the humble vehicle that would soon approach. Aldenora, now transformed into her assumed persona, drove her ancient Ford Taurus onto the lot, its engine sputtering a pathetic protest, a series of coughs and wheezes that sounded like a dying breath. The contrast between her vehicle and the gleaming rows of Porsches and Lamborghinis was almost comical. She parked it deliberately in a spot usually reserved for the latest model sports cars, a defiant, if unnoticed, act of rebellion against the established order, a silent challenge. Stepping out, she adjusted her tattered coat, feeling the unfamiliar weight of anonymity settle upon her. It was a strange sensation, liberating yet also isolating. The automatic doors of the showroom swished open, revealing a world of gleaming surfaces, hushed conversations punctuated by polite laughter, and an air of rarefied exclusivity that seemed to press down on her. The scent of new leather and expensive air fresheners hung in the air, a stark contrast to the faint scent of old oil that clung to her own clothes. A young, impeccably dressed receptionist, whose name Aldenora knew intimately from corporate reports but who now viewed her with barely concealed disdain, offered a perfunctory, "Can I help you?" Her tone suggested she hoped the answer would be no, and that Aldenora would promptly disappear, a stain on the pristine floor. Yes, dear, Aldenora replied, her voice deliberately frail, a little raspy, as if unused to prolonged conversation. I seem to have a bit of a cough in my old car. Nothing serious, I hope, but a simple checkup, perhaps a quick fix. It's been a reliable old thing, but it's getting on in years, you see. The receptionist's manicured eyebrow arched, a perfect arc of polite incredulity. Her perfectly made-up face betrayed a flicker of amusement, quickly suppressed. Check-up? For that vehicle? Her gaze flickered to the Taurus outside, then back to Aldenora, a look of polite incredulity on her face that bordered on open mockery. Madam, this is Velocity Motors. We specialize in luxury and performance vehicles. Perhaps a general repair shop would be more suited to your needs. There's one just a few blocks away, quite good for older models. The implication was clear. Aldenora was in the wrong place, a blight on their pristine image, an inconvenience to be swiftly removed. Just then, Thorn, radiating self-importance like a personal aura, strode through the showroom, his laughter echoing slightly as he regaled a potential client with a story of a recent acquisition. Serafina trailed elegantly behind him, her movements fluid and practiced, like a model on a runway. They were overseeing a new display of a limited edition supercar, their voices animated with discussions of profit margins and marketing strategies, their world entirely self-contained and self-congratulatory. Thorn, ever watchful of the showroom's image, his eyes constantly scanning for anything that might disrupt the illusion of perfection, spotted Aldenora. His eyes narrowed, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face, as if a fly had landed on his polished shoe. What seems to be the issue here, Felicity? Thorn demanded, his voice sharp, addressing the receptionist without breaking stride. His gaze, devoid of warmth, swept over Aldenora, dismissing her as an inconvenience, a problem to be solved, not a person to be acknowledged. Is everything in order? We have VIP clients arriving shortly. Felicity, eager to please and clearly flustered, quickly explained, this lady wishes to have her car serviced, Mr. Thorn. I was just explaining our specialization. She seems to be under the impression we handle any vehicle. Her tone was apologetic, as if Aldenora's mere presence was an affront. Thorn's eyes flickered to the Taurus, and a sneer twisted his lips, a look of utter disdain. He let out a soft, derisive chuckle, a sound devoid of humor, purely mocking. Madam, he said, his voice dripping with condescension, each syllable carefully weighted to convey his superiority, we don't service museum pieces here. We deal with high-performance engines, not lawnmowers on wheels. This isn't a charity garage, it's a premier dealership. You're wasting your time, and more importantly, our time. Our resources are for clients who appreciate real luxury, not relics. Serafina, ever the echo, chimed in, her voice pitched perfectly to convey a mix of exasperation and amusement. Honestly, Thorn, it's quite an eyesore. It's affecting the ambience. Our clients come here for an experience, a vision of aspiration, not a reminder of what they've left behind. She glanced around, as if worried other potential clients might be repulsed by Aldenora's presence, their carefully curated illusion of wealth potentially shattered by a beat-up sedan. Aldenora met Thorn's gaze, her eyes, though seemingly aged and clouded, held a sharpness that he completely overlooked, a depth of knowledge that would have unnerved him had he possessed the capacity to see it. It's a classic, she corrected softly, her voice still mild, betraying no hint of the fury simmering beneath, only a quiet dignity. And it's a good car. Just needs a little attention. A little understanding, perhaps. Thorn laughed outright, a harsh, humorless sound that cut through the polite hum of the showroom. A classic? Madam, it's a rust bucket. Take it to a scrapyard. Or better yet, leave it here and we'll dispose of it for you. Consider it a public service, clearing the lot of such visual pollution. Serafina snickered, finding her partner's wit utterly charming, reinforcing his cruelty with her own brittle amusement. They then turned their backs, resuming their discussion about the supercar, their voices rising in volume, treating Aldenora as if she had already vanished, her presence dismissed, her worth nullified. The blatant disrespect, the casual cruelty, the utter lack of even basic human decency, was exactly what Aldenora had anticipated, yet it still stung, a dull ache of disappointment in her heart. As Aldenora stood, feeling the weight of their dismissal, the silent judgment of the entire showroom, a different figure emerged from the service bay. He was an older man, his work clothes stained with grease and oil, the marks of honest labor etched deep into the fabric. His face was lined with years of honest toil, a landscape of experience, but his eyes, though tired, held a gentle kindness that stood in stark contrast to the glacial expressions of Thorn and Serafina. This was Silas, a mechanic in his late 60s, a silent, humble fixture of the dealership for decades, a man Aldenora knew only through employee reports, a name almost lost in the vastness of her organization. He carried a tool caddy, his gait slightly stooped from years spent leaning over engines, but his eyes held a gentle kindness that seemed to radiate warmth in the cold, opulent space. Silas had observed the scene from a distance, drawn by the raised voices and the discomfort emanating from the reception area. The disdain emanating from Thorn and Serafina was palpable even from across the showroom, a wave of negativity. He saw Aldenora, frail and seemingly lost, being openly ridiculed, her simple dignity assaulted by the casual cruelty of those in power. Something in his soul, a deep-seated empathy that wealth and status had never managed to corrupt, stirred within him. He remembered his own grandmother, a woman who always said, "A little kindness goes a long way." He approached her, not with the hurried, dismissive air of the other staff, but with a quiet, measured pace, his footsteps soft on the polished floor. "Excuse me, ma'am," Silas said, his voice surprisingly soft and respectful, a stark contrast to Thorn's booming arrogance that still echoed faintly. "I couldn't help but notice you might need some assistance. Is your car giving you trouble?" Sometimes those older models just need a keen eye, a bit of the old touch. Aldenora turned, genuinely surprised by the genuine warmth in his tone, a sudden oasis of humanity in a desert of indifference. "Oh, hello, young man," she said, a faint smile gracing her lips, a smile she hadn't genuinely offered in days. "Yes, just a little cough, as I said. Nothing major, I hope." "She's a good old workhorse, she is." Silas nodded, his gaze respectful, unclouded by judgment. He didn't look at her clothes, or her age, or even the antiquity of her car with judgment. He looked at her as a person in need, a customer, a fellow human being. "Well, ma'am, I'd be happy to take a look for you. Sometimes those older engines just need a bit of tender loving care. They don't make 'em like they used to, you know. Built to last, those ones." He offered a small, sincere smile, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "My name's Silas. I've been working on cars for over 40 years, ever since I was a boy in my father's garage, and I can tell you, every car deserves respect, no matter its age or what it's worth. Every vehicle tells a story." Thorn, overhearing Silas's words, spun around, his face contorted in a sneer, a vein throbbing slightly in his temple. "Silas. What do you think you're doing? We don't waste time on junk. Get back to the high-value vehicles. We have a Maserati coming in for an oil change, a high-priority client, and you're chatting up a vagrant." His voice was a harsh whisper, filled with barely suppressed rage. Silas, however, did not flinch. He merely gave Thorn a calm, steady look, his gaze unwavering, filled with a quiet strength that seemed to disarm Thorn's fury, if only for a moment. "Mr. Thorn, with all due respect, a car is a car. And a customer is a customer. My job is to fix vehicles, and this lady needs help. It won't take long." True service is about helping all who seek it. His quiet defiance was almost imperceptible, a gentle ripple against Thorn's storm, yet it resonated deeply with Aldenora. Nonsense, Serafina declared, her voice sharp, cutting, as she stepped closer to Thorn, placing a proprietary hand on his arm. Don't you understand the brand image, Silas? This sort of benevolence is simply not good for business. It tarnishes our reputation. We cultivate exclusivity, not commonality. Silas simply turned his back on them, a silent rebuke more powerful than any shouted retort, a quiet act of rebellion. He gestured towards the service bay, a clean, well-lit space that felt like a sanctuary. If you'd like to pull your car around, ma'am, I'll have a look right away. No charge for the diagnostic, of course. Consider it a neighborly gesture. Aldenora's heart swelled with an emotion she hadn't felt in years, genuine hope. It was a fragile, tender thing, but it was there, blooming in the most unexpected of places. She saw in Silas not just a mechanic, but a man embodying the very values she sought, the essence of the company she had built. As she slowly made her way back to her car, her worn coat feeling lighter, Silas followed, his movements unhurried, his demeanor respectful. He knelt by the old Taurus, opening the hood with a practiced hand, his fingers, though calloused, moving with surprising dexterity and care. He examined the engine with the same meticulous attention he would afford a multi-million-dollar Bugatti, his brow furrowed in concentration. He explained what he was doing, asking her questions about the car's history, listening intently to her answers, treating her not as a nuisance but as a valued client, a person whose story mattered. He found a loose connection, tightened it with a simple twist of his wrench, and in minutes, the engine purred back to life, smoother than it had been in years, a steady, comforting hum. There you go, ma'am, he said, wiping his hands on a rag, a genuine smile lighting his face. Just a little hiccup. She's a good old girl. You take care of her, and she'll keep taking care of you. A little bit of attention, that's all she needed. Aldenora, tears welling in her eyes, reached into her worn purse, her fingers fumbling slightly. How much do I owe you, Silas? She asked, her voice thick with emotion. Silas shook his head, his smile unwavering. Nothing, ma'am. Just glad I could help. Sometimes, all a person needs is a little kindness. It costs nothing, but means everything. He walked her back into the showroom, and as he did, he subtly shielded her from Thorn and Serafina's continued, dismissive glances, a silent protector. The contrast between her entitled family and this humble, good-hearted man was now etched indelibly in Aldenora's mind. The path forward, for the Velocity Auto Group, became startlingly clear. The final piece of her intricate puzzle had fallen into place. Weeks later, the annual Velocity Auto Group shareholders meeting was underway, held in the grand ballroom of a five-star hotel that Aldenora herself owned, a property she had acquired decades ago with an eye for understated elegance. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and ambition, a palpable buzz of anticipation. Hundreds of key employees, major investors, and, of course, the family, were present, all dressed in their finest attire, their faces alight with expectation. Thorn and Serafina sat at the head table, beaming, confident that this meeting would cement Thorn's position as the inevitable successor to Aldenora, whose health, they presumed, was failing, and whose grip on the empire was loosening. They exchanged smug glances, already envisioning their reign. Aldenora, seated at the main table, appeared in her usual regal attire, her silver hair impeccably coiffed, her silk suit exuding an aura of understated power, a quiet strength that belied her age. She had listened patiently as Thorn presented his vision for the company, a vision that focused exclusively on aggressive expansion, market domination, and maximizing shareholder profit. He spoke of new markets, higher margins, ruthless efficiency, with hardly a mention of customer service, employee welfare, or ethical practices. He spoke of streamlining operations, a euphemism Aldenora knew meant cutting corners, reducing staff benefits, and outsourcing jobs to save a few pennies. Serafina, beside him, nodded enthusiastically, whispering words of encouragement, her eyes gleaming with avarice. As Thorn concluded his presentation to polite, if unenthusiastic, applause, Aldenora rose, her movements slow and deliberate, her voice, though soft, carrying an authority that instantly silenced the room, the hushed murmurs dying down into expectant silence. "Thank you, Thorn, for that illuminating presentation," she began, a hint of irony in her tone that only a few truly caught. "It is indeed a vision for the future, one entirely focused on growth. On numbers. On expansion." She paused, letting her gaze sweep over the expectant faces, taking in the sea of suits and designer dresses, finally resting on Thorn and Serafina, who now looked slightly uncomfortable under her prolonged scrutiny, a faint unease flickering in their eyes. However, Aldenora continued, her voice gaining strength, resonating through the vast ballroom. The Velocity Auto Group was not built on numbers alone. It was built on trust, on integrity, on the belief that a business, much like a family, thrives on respect and genuine care for its people and its customers. It was built on the sweat and dedication of every mechanic, every salesperson, every cleaner who believed in doing good work. It was built on the promise of unparalleled service, not just unparalleled profits. She took a deep breath, and a glint of steel entered her eyes, a cold, hard resolve. And it has become clear to me that some have forgotten these foundational principles. Some have become so blinded by the allure of superficial wealth that they can no longer see true value when it stands right before them. They confuse a price tag with worth. Thorn shifted uneasily, a nervous tremor crossing his face, his confident smile faltering. "Aldenora, what exactly are you implying? This is a professional setting. We've presented a solid business plan." Aldenora smiled, a chillingly knowing smile that sent a shiver down Thorn's spine. "I am implying, Thorn, that I have recently conducted a little market research, if you will. A deep dive into the true character of this company, from the top down. I sought to understand who truly values integrity and kindness over superficial wealth, who understands the true heart of this enterprise." Her eyes bore into Thorn's, then Serafina's, their faces slowly draining of color. "And I did so, not as Aldenora, the matriarch, the founder, the CEO, but as a frail, shabbily dressed old woman driving a beat-up, vintage sedan, a vehicle most of you would dismiss as utterly worthless." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room, a collective gasp. Thorn and Serafina's faces, initially confused, slowly began to pale as a horrifying realization dawned upon them, a cold dread seizing their hearts. The old woman. The junky car. The incident at the dealership. The derisive words. It couldn't be. Their past cruelty, so casually dispensed, was now rising like a specter to haunt them. Aldenora pressed on, her voice now ringing with undeniable authority, each word a hammer blow. "I visited our flagship dealership. I asked for a simple repair, a trivial matter in the grand scheme of things, a test of basic human decency. And what I witnessed, Thorn, Serafina, was a stark revelation." Her gaze hardened, unwavering. "I witnessed open disdain, mockery, and outright disrespect from certain individuals who believed themselves to be untouchable, beyond reproach, above the common courtesy owed to any human being. Individuals who epitomized the very superficiality and greed I feared had corrupted my legacy." She paused dramatically, letting the weight of her words settle, the silence in the room deafening. "You, Thorn, and you, Serafina, dismissed me, ridiculed me, and treated me as a nuisance who was wasting your precious time. You saw only an old car and old clothes, and you judged me worthless." Thorn gasped, a strangled sound escaping his throat, his face contorting in a mixture of terror and disbelief. Serafina's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock and dawning horror, her carefully constructed composure completely shattered, revealing the raw panic beneath. Their perfectly constructed masks of composure shattered, revealing the raw panic beneath. The entire room watched, mesmerized, as Aldenora systematically dismantled their carefully curated images, revealing the ugly truth. However, Aldenora continued, her voice softening slightly, a glimmer of light in the impending storm, a beacon of hope in the darkness. I also witnessed something else. Something truly remarkable. A kind, elderly mechanic, a humble employee named Silas, approached me with genuine respect. He offered his help, treating my worn-out car with the same care he would a luxury vehicle, because he understood that every machine, and every person, deserves dignity. He saw a person in need, not a social status. He embodied the true spirit of Velocity Auto Group, the spirit upon which I built this empire, the heart that I thought was lost. As if on cue, the ballroom doors opened. A quiet man, dressed in a clean but simple suit that looked slightly uncomfortable on him, entered. It was Silas. He looked around, bewildered, clearly unaware of the drama unfolding, his eyes wide with confusion. Aldenora gestured towards him, a welcoming smile on her face. Silas, please, come forward. Silas, looking utterly out of place amidst the corporate elite, slowly made his way to the front, his eyes darting nervously, his confusion evident. Thorn and Seraphina stared at him, their faces a mixture of disbelief and utter dread, their worst fears confirmed. Aldenora turned to the assembled shareholders, her voice resonating with finality, cutting through the stunned silence. This experience has illuminated the true path forward for the Velocity Auto Group. An empire built on integrity cannot be led by those who lack it. An organization that prides itself on service cannot be run by those who scorn kindness and compassion. She looked directly at Thorn and Seraphina, her gaze unwavering, uncompromising. Effective immediately, Thorn and Seraphina, your positions within the Velocity Auto Group are terminated. Your shares will be bought back by the company at market value, and you are to vacate company properties by the end of the day. All corporate privileges are hereby revoked. A collective gasp swept through the room, followed by a ripple of stunned whispers. Thorn tried to stammer, his voice a desperate plea, "Grandma, you can't. This is preposterous. I'm your heir. This is my birthright." Aldenora's voice, though calm, was like a gavel striking down a verdict, absolute and unyielding. "You are a testament to what happens when entitlement replaces empathy, Thorn. You are not fit to lead. My legacy will not be defined by greed and superficiality. It will be defined by the values I instilled, values you trampled upon." She then turned to a stunned Silas, her expression softening, her eyes filled with warmth and genuine admiration. "Silas, your quiet integrity has shone brighter than any diamond. You represent the true heart of this company, the values that truly matter." She then made her announcement, one that would shock everyone present, irrevocably altering the future of the company. "Therefore, I am proud to announce that Silas will be appointed as the new head of operations for the entire Velocity Auto Group Service Division, effective immediately. And he will be given a substantial stake in the company, ensuring his dedication is not only recognized but tangibly rewarded, a testament to true meritocracy." Silas's jaw dropped. He looked from Aldenora to the stunned faces of Thorn and Seraphina, then back to Aldenora, utterly speechless, his mind reeling from the magnitude of the announcement. The masks had fallen. The truth was out. And the future of the Velocity Auto Group, thanks to a beat-up old car and a kind mechanic, had just taken a dramatically different, and infinitely more hopeful, turn. The immediate aftermath of Aldenora's pronouncement was a maelstrom of shock, disbelief, and a desperate scramble for understanding. Thorn and Seraphina, their faces ghost-white, erupted in a cacophony of denials and accusations, their carefully constructed personas crumbling into raw, ugly panic. "This is insane, Grandma!" Thorn shrieked, his voice cracking with a mixture of rage and terror, completely losing control. You're ruining everything. This is my birthright. You can't just give it away to some greasy mechanic. He's nobody. He lunged forward, his eyes wild, but was gently, yet firmly, restrained by two security personnel who had quietly positioned themselves near the stage, their presence a silent, unwavering testament to Aldanora's foresight. Serafina, meanwhile, was hyperventilating, her carefully constructed composure completely shattered, her perfect makeup streaking with tears. This is a joke. A cruel, pathetic joke. We'll sue. You can't do this, Aldanora. We have rights. Her eyes, once sharp and calculating, now darted wildly, reflecting the unraveling of her carefully curated world, her dreams of endless luxury dissolving before her eyes. She clutched her expensive handbag, as if it could somehow protect her from the inevitable, from the crashing reality of their downfall. Aldanora, however, remained unperturbed, her expression calm and resolute. She had anticipated their reaction, every desperate plea and furious accusation. It is no joke, Thorn, she stated calmly, her voice resonating with an unwavering resolve that silenced his protests. It is a course correction. Your birthright was to learn, to grow, to contribute. Not to inherit without merit. You had every opportunity to prove your worth, to embrace the values that built this company, but you chose arrogance and contempt. This is not a punishment, but a consequence of your own choices, a natural outcome of your actions. Within minutes, legal counsel, already prepared with a meticulously drawn plan, approached Thorn and Serafina, presenting them with official termination papers and notices for the immediate vacation of all company-owned properties, including their lavish corporate apartments, their sprawling country estates, and the luxury vehicles they drove. Their company credit cards were deactivated on the spot, the electronic rejection sound a stark confirmation of their newfound powerlessness. Their access to the company network was revoked remotely, cutting them off from their carefully built digital kingdom. The swiftness and finality of their downfall were brutal, a testament to Aldanora's meticulous planning and her absolute, unchallengeable authority. Thorn, initially defiant, crumbled as the reality of his situation set in, the full weight of Aldanora's words crushing him. His inheritance, his perceived unassailable position, his entire future, dissolved before his eyes. The multi-million-dollar trust fund he had squandered over the years was a mere pittance compared to the empire he had just lost, a fleeting comfort that would soon run dry. He was no longer the golden boy, the favored grandson. He was simply Thorn, a man stripped of his power, his prestige, and his financial security, cast adrift in a world he no longer understood. Serafina, witnessing the complete implosion of their future, burst into hysterical sobs, realizing that her dreams of a life of endless luxury, fueled by Thorn's supposed inheritance, had evaporated like mist, leaving only a bitter emptiness. They were escorted out of the ballroom, their pleas and protests echoing hollowly in the sudden silence of the room, their humiliating exit witnessed by hundreds. Their downfall was swift, public, and absolute, a chilling cautionary tale for anyone who had ever underestimated Aldanora. Meanwhile, Silas stood frozen, his mind struggling to comprehend the seismic shift that had just occurred in his life. He, a humble mechanic who had quietly toiled for decades, who measured his worth by the smooth hum of an engine, was now the head of operations for an entire division of a multi-billion-dollar company. The weight of Aldanora's words, a substantial stake in the company, was almost too much to process. He had never imagined anything beyond his modest salary and the quiet satisfaction of a job well done, of helping people, one car at a time. His world, once so predictable, had been turned completely upside down. Aldanora approached him, her gaze warm and genuine, a soft smile gracing her lips. "Silas, you seem a little overwhelmed." Her voice was kind, reassuring. Silas finally found his voice, a whispered, incredulous sound, barely audible over the remaining whispers in the room. "Aldanora. Mrs. Aldanora. I I don't understand. I'm just a mechanic. I don't know anything about management. About boardrooms and profits. His humility was so profound, so unfeigned, it touched the hearts of many in the room, a stark contrast to the greed they had just witnessed. Aldenora gently placed a hand on his arm, her touch conveying a quiet strength. Silas, you know more about management than any business school could ever teach. You know integrity. You know respect. You know service. You treat every person, and every machine, with dignity, with care. Those are the cornerstones of true leadership. Those are the values I built this company on. We will provide you with all the training and support you need, of course. We will surround you with excellent people. But the heart, Silas, the heart of this division, is already yours, and that is what truly matters. Later that day, Aldenora's legal team presented Silas with the details of his new life, his new responsibilities, and his new financial reality. Not only was he appointed to a senior executive position with a generous salary that surpassed anything he could have dreamed of, but he was also granted a significant equity stake in the Velocity Auto Group, making him a multimillionaire overnight, a silent partner in the empire he had helped save. Furthermore, a new fully furnished, modern house, complete with a garage large enough for his beloved classic cars, including the old Taurus, which Aldenora insisted remain his, a symbol of their unexpected connection, was signed over to him, free and clear. It was more than he could have ever dreamed of, a profound, life-altering reward for a lifetime of unassuming kindness and unwavering character, for simply being a good man. Silas, overwhelmed, simply wept, tears of pure gratitude streaming down his weathered face. He looked at Aldenora, the powerful matriarch who had once been a vulnerable old woman in a tattered coat, and understood the true depth of her vision, the profound wisdom of her test. He knew, with absolute certainty, that he would dedicate every fiber of his being to upholding the values she cherished, to ensuring that the Velocity Auto Group would once again be known not just for its luxury cars, but for its unparalleled heart, its integrity, and its genuine human connection. Months passed, and the dust settled over the Velocity Auto Group. The abrupt, public dismissal of Thorne and Serafina sent shockwaves through the industry, becoming a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms across the globe. But Aldenora's subsequent explanation, detailing her undercover operation and the values she sought to uphold, resonated deeply with the public and the company's employees. The media, initially sensationalist, eager for scandal, soon shifted their narrative to one of a powerful matriarch reclaiming her legacy and reinforcing ethical leadership, a refreshing story of integrity in a world often perceived as driven solely by profit. Under Silas's quiet, yet resolute, leadership, the service division of Velocity Auto Group underwent a profound transformation. He implemented new training programs that emphasized empathy, genuine customer service, and treating every client, regardless of their apparent wealth, with the same respect and dignity. He fostered a culture of mutual support among the mechanics, a camaraderie that had been lost under the previous, profit-driven management. Mechanics now helped each other, shared knowledge, and took pride not just in fixing cars, but in the trust they built with customers. Customer satisfaction scores soared, and employee morale reached unprecedented levels, a palpable sense of renewed purpose permeating the workshops. The dealership, once a cold monument to luxury, began to feel like a place of genuine care and community, a place where people and their vehicles were truly valued. Aldenora watched from a comfortable distance, no longer burdened by the daily operations, but deeply involved in strategic oversight, a guiding hand rather than a daily taskmaster. She spent her days pursuing her passions, reading, traveling, enjoying her golden years, secure in the knowledge that her empire was in capable, ethical hands. She would often visit the dealership, no longer in disguise, but as the revered founder, and observe Silas interacting with his team, his humble kindness radiating through the entire division. She saw the light in his eyes, the genuine care he extended to everyone, and a deep sense of peace settled within her. Her legacy, she realized, was not just about the billions of dollars or the sprawling chain of dealerships, it was about the values it represented, values that Silas embodied so perfectly. Thorn and Serafina, stripped of their lavish lifestyle and public image, struggled to adapt. Without the family name and money, they found themselves adrift in a world they had once scorned, forced to confront the harsh realities of their own inadequacy. Their superficial connections dissolved, friends who had only been drawn to their wealth quickly disappearing. Their attempts to re-enter the high-flying world of business were met with cold indifference, their reputation irrevocably tarnished. They learned, too late, that true influence and respect are earned through character, not merely inherited through birth or bought with a platinum card. They were left with nothing but their own emptiness, a profound consequence of their choices. Aldanora's story became a quiet legend within the corporate world, a powerful reminder that genuine character often reveals itself not in the bright glare of success, but in the quiet shadows of perceived insignificance. It is in the darkness, when all pretenses are stripped away, that the true nature of a person shines through, unadulterated and true. And Silas, the humble mechanic, proved that kindness, integrity, and simple human decency are not just virtues, they are the most valuable currencies in the world, always finding their rightful reward, often in ways more profound than one could ever imagine. The moral was clear: the seeds of goodness, when sown with sincerity, will always bear the most bountiful fruit. If this story of Aldanora, Thorn, and Silas resonated with you, imagine how many more untold tales of justice, karma, and unexpected twists are out there. Our channel is dedicated to bringing you these powerful narratives, where appearances are deceiving, and true character always finds its moment to shine. Don't miss another incredible story. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you're always the first to know when a new video drops. And we want to hear from you. What was the most surprising moment in Aldanora's story for you? Have you ever witnessed someone being judged unfairly based on their appearance, only for them to reveal their true worth? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your insights make our community even stronger.